power is not good or bad in and of itself. It is like money. It is like a lot of things in life. It is a tool for your tool belt, and how you apply it is what determines whether it's good or evil. People want to see flaws. Like, perfection is something that is not achievable. And so when anybody presents themselves to be a model of perfection, it instantly gets people very angry about this kind of thing. The biggest danger after success is overreach. And that's what ends up making them a liar, because they overpromise and underdeliver.
The self-control is that last fruit spirit, because that's a huge speed bump for everybody. Male, female, it doesn't matter who you are, what you do.
So today we are finishing up season 3, talking about Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power. So laws 1 to 44, in a lot of ways, have to do with how power works. And now we're talking about how power is lost. And that's how we're going to wrap up this season. Next season, we're going to be talking about family matters. If you have anything of particular interest, go ahead and put them in the comments section down below so that we can integrate that in our planning process for the next season. So this week, we've got most powerful leaders fail because they change too much, provoke envy, push victory too far, or become too rigid. Is the overview of the 4 laws we're going over today. Before we get into it, do you have anything to put out?
I have a pink microphone.
Yay. All right. So law number 45 is preach the need for change, but never reform too much at once. And the idea is that people support change for the better a little bit at a time. But a lot of times, people will try to bite off too much too quickly. Have you ever seen that happen?
Yes, especially when somebody who has been waiting at a lower position, they finally get their shot and they're like, I'm going to change every single thing ever and make it exactly like I've always armchair quarterbacked saying that this has to be. And then they get into that actual position and realize all sort of the politics at play, the policies that they have to navigate. A lot of times it happens with political candidates.
Sure.
They're like, I'm going to do all these things. This is ridiculous. And then they're like, oh, I have to work with this whole system. Never mind. I guess I can't do everything I want to do.
Yeah, they promise the world, and then all of a sudden they get into office and the people with the suits and the briefcases walk in and they say, well, actually, sir, here's the left and right boundaries of what you could actually do. And they're like, this is not at all what I campaigned on. This is terrible.
It's like, great, I'm a liar now.
Well, there you go. I mean, to be fair, most of the time, they don't know that to be the case. So is it a matter that they're actually lying? Well, they can go ahead and say, I want to do this. But most of them say, I will do this. And that's what ends up making them a liar, because they overpromise and underdeliver.
Yeah, but I mean, no matter what, you just because you didn't know the rules of the game or how the system works, it's still not a good look.
Right, but at the same time, the political bandwagon does not reward people for making tepid comments. The political environment rewards people for making sure statements, and statements that are more concrete, and statements that are more emotionally stirring. Whereas if you were to go ahead and provide a middle of the road, nuanced perspective, most people aren't ready for that. People can only really listen to short bumper stickers en masse. And if you were to actually try to engage somebody in depth of policy, most people's eyes just glaze over because of TikTok attention spans nowadays.
Yeah.
I think that successful leaders introduce change bit by bit rather than trying to do things wholesale. Kind of like the example that you provided, where somebody that's at an associate level goes ahead and gets the first taste of managerial power, and then they just goes to their head and they run away with it until they need to be reined in and go, yeah, that's not how this works. But hopefully they were trained along the way in, oh, this is how the game is played. Let me learn how to play the game while I'm in my position, so that by the time I get into the position over me, that I will understand how the game is played and play it well. Mm-hmm. I think that's really interesting how, whether you're talking about business or family or leadership in general, this definitely makes a lot of sense, right? One change framework that I learned when I was in the Air Force is the idea, it's 3 steps, and you go ahead and look at a problem, and you can unfreeze where it's at, like it's locked into place because that's what the norm is. So you unfreeze it by convincing people that there's a need for change or talking about what the pluses and minuses of the thing as it is, the status quo, and then inspiring people to have the feeling that there should be a change made. Then you make an appropriate change, get all of the logistics worked out for how that change needs to happen, get everybody on board that this is the new normal, and then refreeze it and lock it in place so that people don't try to change it because it's all melty water, right? You want to go ahead and turn it back into an ice cube once you put it into the freezer.
You like almost overchange it to where it's no longer recognizable.
Well, you don't want to overchange it, is the idea.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you lock it in place afterward and be like, okay, this is what we're doing now. No more. The door is closed.
Turn it right
the
now.
door of change is closed.
Right. And then the thing is, this is an iterative process, right? So you're going to go ahead and take a look at that and go, what are the strengths and weaknesses of this new position? Or you look in a different department to go ahead and make adjustments in a different area. And then you come back after this policy that you've cemented in place has had time to see results, and you can judge it by its fruits. Mm-hmm. And if it has been a really fruitful thing, and then it's been found that you can be more fruitful with further iteration and change, then by all means, use the same process. Unfreeze it, change it, refreeze it. Boom. One step at a time. And this works in business, this works in leadership, this works in families.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like, we're going to go ahead and completely rearrange everything that we're doing, right away. A lot of times it's just a matter of, let's take this piece that is the most important piece to deal with right now and deal with it. And then let it be known, and then find the next most important piece and get them one at a time so that the family doesn't have instability issues, that people's emotions don't run on high because, oh my gosh, everything's changing so quickly, because that's chaotic. It's not a good way for a family to have peace. And I think that most men and women want peace in some way, shape, or form. It's just the method by which it is achieved.
Yeah. How they get there.
How they get there, oftentimes are very different things. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times women will go ahead and shake things up for the sake of inventing chaos in order to highlight a problem in the relationship. They don't have a good way of expressing what the problem is in a way that he can understand just with direct communication, because women don't communicate directly. They tend to communicate indirectly.
Yeah.
And so they cause a problem for it to be solved.
It's like, this isn't working. It's like, okay, what are the proposed changes that we need to make to the thing? I don't know. I'll know when I see it. It's like, wait, no, this is
There's
not
no
how
direction.
we work on this. No, this is not the way.
Right? And then so you have to go ahead and work through the spaghetti ball of feelings and thoughts and go, where are the feelings? Is this a bad touch? Is this a good touch? What's going on in this spaghetti ball?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a really frustrating way to solve problems. So if you can find ways to get through that process faster, sometimes there is no way to get through it that much faster.
This is why women shouldn't be in the driver's seat.
Right.
It's just not the way to go.
But the idea is you can recognize that there's a need for change, but then not be able to put your finger on what actually the change should be. Mm-hmm. And that causes some issues too. So I think that's why, generally speaking, as men, as deductive problem solvers, we can scour the evidence and see where things are going wrong in the system and find bits and pieces to change out and be like, have we established order? Is it more orderly or is it more chaotic? And you take a look at it, and a lot of times, if you don't hear explosions, that's a good thing. You're like, yes, good enough. Let's go ahead and work on the next bit.
No news is good news.
No news is good news. And sometimes it's just a matter of observing the context of whatever you're working on, especially in a relationship, because it's not so straightforward a lot of times, especially when you're young and like a relationship is young and you haven't had that time to really get to know each other and how to communicate well with each other.
Yeah, to navigate and hash out like your dynamic.
Right. And say, how do we solve problems together? How do you bring up a problem? Is it important to be more of a chaos goblin, or should some attempt at signaling directly be the first step?
Even if, especially, the chaos goblinry.
Yeah.
Even if you can say, this isn't working, but have some kind of semblance of being able to describe what right looks like, at least you could run with that and say, okay, let's devise a way to get there from A to B.
Sure. I mean, if I can have a visual representation, and that's at least a direction.
Exactly.
Right? And compare that to the spaghetti ball mess of just feelings. It's very difficult to navigate that with any sense of clarity unless you go through it step by step. And then normally, if it's a whole spaghetti ball, there's going to be layers of foundational issues that you're going to find along the way. And most of the time, you got to go through it one at a time.
Yeah.
Because if you try to address everything at once, as much as women have this like consolidated spaghetti ball of emotions and feelings, you can't solve problems like that. Like, it's as if the expectation is to throw a grenade at a system and just blow it up. No, that ends up having more problems than you're solving. And it's just not good for most relationships. But I think that a lot of people fail to have the skills to adequately express their feelings in a way that can be conveyed to someone that isn't actually feeling those same feelings.
It's interesting, like you brought up like how, especially women, obviously, wrap a lot of their grievances or whatever with in feelings. And especially if you haven't done that working out of your dynamic and your way of communicating things, especially things that are like problematic.
Right.
Like it's going to be a difficult conversation, right? And it's just like telling a woman to calm down.
Yeah,
or saying
it rarely works.
Yeah, or saying like, "Oh my gosh, I can't talk to you while you're so emotional." Like that's just going to be like completely
It's just inflammatory.
Inflammatory, exactly. Yeah. So it's interesting though, talking about this. It's interesting to note that's where that's coming from. It's like I cannot wade through all the feelings that you're like wrapping this issue around.
Yeah,
I need to get to the issue and like cut all the feeling noise out. And it's noteworthy to say, like, to think about that's where that is coming from. Those comments about calm down and like you're too emotional, all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not that you're just throwing out like an insult to.
I'm not
like,
trying to invalidate your emotions.
Exactly.
What I'm trying to do is calm the noise down so that we can get to the root of who can fix the thing.
Yeah.
Right. And telling somebody just to telling a woman specifically just to calm down is rarely the strategy. A lot of times you'd get better results with something more like,
hello, yes. What is it?
And that's it. You just grab her hand and just look at her.
Yeah.
And she can flail for a little bit, but eventually she'll settle down.
There's that one guy. He looks kind of like a lankier, like smaller framed version of Steve Jobs.
No
and
idea.
he talks about like relationships. He was talking about like the one video that I first saw him was talking about how his wife was like balled up in the bathroom and like the kids were insane out there. Mm-hmm. And she's just like, I don't see any of you in my family. I love you so much, but like right now, all I see you guys is a task list. Like she was at that level of like burnout. Mm-hmm. Like all the idiot lights were going off on the dashboard, right?
Sure.
And so I've seen like a couple of more of his videos. I've commented. If I see it again, I'll like be like, this is that guy.
Okay.
But he was talking about like rules of like relationships, especially rules of engagement when it comes to talking about stuff. And he said like ABT, always be touching. And I was like, it fit in the scope of all the focus of the video, but it was just interesting. I was like, yeah, that's part of it.
There is something to be said about maintaining connection and that physical piece being a part of it, mm-hmm. right? Because she feels your presence, not just like being there, but like holding her,
literally feels it,
then it gives her another set of inputs, because the nature of how men communicate is usually with direct communication. And so we rely more on the content of our words and what we say rather than the context, the means through which we do it. Right? Whereas if we just hold on to your hand and take a look in your eyes and say it just 20% slower and with a lower voice, it just lulls her into a sense of security.
Yeah, it hits different. Literally, that hits different, rather than, I need you to stop. I need you to hold up. Yeah,
and I think that's a matter of emotional maturity for men, because a lot of times we're not taught how to effectively communicate across different modes, because primarily men are concerned with doing, not being. Whereas women are primarily concerned with being, and doing is just an afterthought. It doesn't really matter.
If it happens. Take it or leave it.
What matters is the feelings, and most women are almost captured by their emotions at any given point in time. And it takes a lot of effort to dig out of that.
Yeah. It's not good or bad. It just is.
It just is, right? And it's how we were created, and it doesn't make sense to get mad about the way that it happened, but just dealing with what is the important part. Because we're better off together than we are apart. And that's really the thing, is we bring different and complementary things to a relationship. And if we can go ahead and take that and bear that in mind while we are working together to solve problems, things will go a lot better. And if we take the time to provide a sense of emotional security along the way, it's easier to solve problems, because usually there's less messy spaghetti on the plate to deal with.
Yeah.
So why do you think that sometimes people will know that there's a change that needs to be made, but then still resist it?
Apart from ADHD?
Well, it could be emotionality, it can be ADHD, it could be you have stuff locked in because you think that this is right, but the results of what's going on shows that's not the case. You see that the current trajectory you're on is leading you down a path that doesn't make sense, but you still don't want to actually change things. You resist any effort to change the thing.
Well, this is the basic tension between novelty and familiarity.
Okay, what do you mean?
When you have something that you've been doing forever and it's not really working and it needs to change, it's interesting, or it's exciting to think about, I'm going to do this other thing, I'm going to do it differently, and it's going to go so much better. But then there comes a point where that novelty wears off and you start looking backwards and be like, did I really do this right? I don't know. Maybe I should go back to what I'm doing, because what is familiar is safer than, and especially when that we talk about, getting the plane off the ground, that is when it starts to get difficult, and you kind of have to stick with it to really see if it's going to work when the novelty does wear off.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of February at every gym across the United States.
Yeah. It's forget it.
It's everybody goes ahead and comes in early January with all this piss and vinegar about how they're going to go ahead and change and do all the things and lose the weight or put on some muscle or whatever the resolution is. And then, boom, middle of February. Nah, I'm good. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go back to eating Cheetos.
Especially the 15th, when all the Valentine's candy goes on clearance.
Oh,
it's half price.
Oh, that's that's rough.
Yeah,
especially for single ladies, because they're trying to lose weight, and then they didn't get picked up for Valentine's, and then now they're just I'm just gonna have after Valentine's chocolate to feed my pit of need.
Stop it!
Feed my pit of need that can never be filled. That's awful.
Or if you have kids, it's oh my gosh, all my kids brought home their class full worth of Valentine's candy and stuff, and I can't let them have it, but It's staring at me. It's taunting me.
It's taunting me. Sure.
Not really. I just put it in a cookie jar. Pro tip. It's like a great thing, like out of sight, out of mind. Put it in a cookie jar and just leave it there and be like, Mom, I did my homework. Oh, cool. Go get a piece of candy.
Yeah. I think it's interesting how going back to the idea of like moderating the amount of change that you do at one point, in order for you to actually make the change happen, you need to have support for the change. And if you try to bite off more than you chew, or than you can chew, it's less likely you're going to have full-throated support for what you're trying to do. And that'll also lead to resistance because a lot of people would be more comfortable with a more moderate change, a little bit incrementally over time than to try to get everything done at once. It kind of reminds me of the whole, like, how do you boil a frog? You just raise the temperature up just a little bit at a time. It's easier to do that, which we see that regularly in how politics plays out, rather than actually solving for the problems that they see in society. So, do you have any other closing thoughts on this law before we move on?
No.
Cool. Law number 46 is never appear too perfect, because perfection breeds envy. Have you seen this on social media at all?
Must be nice. That's instantly what I thought about. Like, must be nice. It's like, and what did they actually call it at the beginning? Pinterest syndrome?
Sure.
Pinterest perfect syndrome. Where you look at things and you think that you're just seeing this picture perfect life. It's like, how are they so together? And I'm just like a hot mess express. Mm-hmm. And you don't realize that's just what they put out on the storefront window. Mm-hmm. Inside is a different story. Especially don't go look in the janitor closets and the bathrooms.
Yeah, don't look at there.
Those are scary.
Never mind the curtain.
Never mind the man behind the curtain.
Don't worry about the man behind the curtain. I am the great and powerful laws.
Smoke and mirrors, man.
Yeah. But I think the idea here is that people want to see flaws. Like, perfection is something that is not achievable. And so when anybody presents themselves to be a model of perfection, it instantly gets people very angry about this kind of thing. Kind of reminds me of the Mary Sue effect. Have you ever heard of that? This is kind of like when in stories to push a female hero, they make it so that she doesn't have any flaws or weaknesses. It's kind of like Captain Marvel. That's why, in a lot of ways, people hated that movie because she did nothing to get her powers. She went through no challenges, no trials. Everything was easy for her. And you just can't identify with that because that's not a typical hero tale, right? There's a lot of times where we would expect some kind of grit or determination or some other character qualities to be shown rather than your character quality is that you're perfect. There's not a compelling character quality.
It's like, okay,
like, how do you tell a story with that? Like, how do you have any narrative or character development with perfection as the baseline?
Yeah. When your arc is a flat line,
there's no journey. You can see it, right? You need mountains and valleys and stuff so that you, as the viewer, can be brought into the experience rather than being like West Texas where everything is flat. You can go ahead and see miles and miles away.
It's funny. My favorite Disney character is Belle. Mm-hmm. And the animators made a very conscious decision, and it's very subtle, so people don't really pick up on it, but it's there to kind of alleviate this kind of thing.
Okay.
Because the story, obviously, we talk about it all the time, Beauty and the Beast, like, it focuses on this man and all of his problems.
Right.
And her fixing all of his problems. Well,
indirectly.
Yeah. So there might be this misperception that this woman is so perfect and that's the only way she can fix him.
Okay. Explore that a little bit. Yeah.
I mean, there's so much like focus on him that you think there is no indication that she has flaws.
Okay. That's interesting. We can go ahead and get on our side on that one.
That is a whole other thing.
There's a whole other thing. But that might actually be worth getting into, but go ahead and finish your thought.
Okay, but so what they did as this subtle nod to this, even the inkling that she has flaws or she is not entirely perfect, if you notice, she has a definitive hairstyle, right? She always has her hair like pulled back, and there's like these rolls and stuff. When they got the live face characters walking around Disney, they have that whole little topsy tail flip. So every once in a while in the animation, you will see a couple of strands of hair fall out of that perfect hairstyle.
Sure.
That she flips back. That is the little bit that they made sure to communicate that this woman has flaws.
Or that she's putting in effort and that it isn't just a matter of her just sitting back and doing nothing.
She's the table, right?
Right. But at the same time, I think that doesn't really alleviate that thought process. Like, sure, in terms of her appearance, sure. But in terms of the narrative scope, that doesn't communicate that.
But it's this subtle thing that they intentionally put in for that purpose.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and pull at this string a little bit because there's a lot behind this. So this reminds me of how sin is treated in the church. How, generally speaking, there's a lot of focus that is devoted to pointing out and rooting out the sins of men in church, whereas on the women's end, it is mostly glossed over. Like every woman is a pretty little princess that can do no wrong. Without a direct recognition that the things that women do that are sinful are generally more subtle and nuanced and have to do with indirect attacks, because that's just the very nature of how women show aggression to each other and how they show aggression to men.
Girl world.
It's girl world. It's the backstabbery. It's the reputation destruction. It's gossip and slander and malice. All of those things. But we do not typically see those things directly addressed in church. And it's as if women are treated like perfect little angels and that men are just devils to be wrangled. It's like, don't get me wrong, men have a lot of faults and we need to address them and we need to work things out and join a band of brothers to work with each other for our own and our mutual benefit. But that doesn't say that women are perfect. Women have stuff to work through as well.
The thing that comes to mind is one of the largest scale, like especially as a proportion of what is talked about in church when it comes to the word modesty.
Right.
And
it's only the physical.
This and the feminist movement has really come for this, especially in the church, because that's the crux of like most of the chatter as far as like
modesty,
what women need to focus on as part of the body of faith. Because we have to, anytime the genders like commingle, that is the biggest thing that's going to be a problem.
Right.
So if your like skirt's too high or your neckline's too low and all of that stuff, you are putting stuff out there for other people to see. Yeah. Specifically other gender that is very visually
you're putting it out there
out to when it comes to women. So the feminists come in and they're like, why are you putting all this blame on women? Why are, men are the ones who just need to look away. It's like,
yeah, let's just go ahead and put blinders on because that'll solve the problem. It's not as if the way that you present yourself advertises something. It advertises something, whether you're a man or a woman, right? When you go ahead and go out in town and you are dressed in a suit as a man, you present yourself in a different light than you would in baggy pants that are sagging. That is a fact of life. People will interpret you differently based on how you present yourself. In like manner, it happens the same way in girl world. When a woman is showing off her tatas for all the world to see, and instead of keeping it in its rightful place for her husband, that's a completely different deal, right? And that should be held accountable, but women, generally speaking, and especially feminists, are allergic to accountability. They're like, you will not put any hindrances on my ability to get my sexual needs met. Whether it's attracting another man to replace your current man, whether it is getting attention when you don't feel like you're getting enough attention, or whether it is just feeling like you are sexy because you just need that attention, you need that fulfillment. That's crazy talk that you can't just see that for what it is and invent all this other nonsense to try to shame men for their part. It's like, yeah, if a guy sees a beautiful woman, of course he's going to take a look. The question is whether he's going to stare. That's the question. Because there's a difference. Like, I can't help it if there's this amazing looking woman right there in my periphery. Yeah, I'm going to acknowledge it because that is a natural part of being a manly guy is we see it. It is what it is, right? But I'm not going to go ahead and, yeah, it's out there. I'm not going to go ahead and obsess over it though. But I think that it's interesting how in the church, women are presented as sweet little perfect angels, and you have the level hierarchy of women. So everybody rates themselves as a 10 to go ahead and make all the women feel special and on even footing. Even though deep down inside, they know there's a freaking difference in how each of them measure up physically. There is no denying it.
What's interesting to me, especially I do not in any way think of myself as a 10.
Nope.
Oh my gosh. But what's really interesting to me is the biggest commentary, like that whole like fake adjusting crowns thing where it's like, oh no, you're beautiful. You are a 10. Absolutely. I get these from conventionally beautiful women.
Yeah.
It's like,
you know why? Because they don't want to be perceived as being too perfect because then people will go ahead and come after them.
well, also,
And it alleviates any sexual competition because if they're going to go ahead and say, oh, you're beautiful just the way
Exactly.
you are, that keeps you out of competition. Because if there's an obvious set of defects that could be being addressed that aren't being addressed, by keeping you where you are, that keeps the competition off.
I love that bracelet. Where did you get it?
Right?
I love that skirt. Where'd you get it? That's the ugly effing skirt I've ever seen in my life. It's like, oh my gosh. That is like what's instantly playing on the inside to me. I'm like, stop it. Just stop it right now. And it's interesting because I think especially a lot of women that I, care to even spend 2 minutes in conversation with.
Sure.
They're very beautiful people, and they're genuinely very nice. And I don't believe they're doing this maliciously. They are just,
It's subconscious.
It's just been like inundated. Like the programming is, I'm just like, because these usually, especially the specific few that I'm thinking about, they really are like self-declared feminists.
Right.
And I'm just like, I don't believe anything you say when it comes to this.
Sure. I mean, they have an agenda when they say these things, whether it's obvious or not.
Mm-hmm. And whether it's misguided or not.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And most of the time I genuinely believe it's misguided. Like you think you're meaning well, but really the whole programming you've been fed is just ridiculous.
It's driving you mad. But it's interesting how a lot of powerful people will treat themselves in a self-deprecating manner to kind of offset this, right? Is they'll make fun of themselves a little bit so that they can be somewhat approachable or somewhat like
Relatable.
somebody that you can relate to.
What is it? Authentic.
Oh yeah, fake authenticity is
Yes.
interesting. But it's interesting because you can go ahead and go overboard with that by being consistently self-deprecating, because then when we think of you, we think of all the self-deprecation that you do, not necessarily what you are known for, what you're famous for, or anything else. And I think it's really bad in a relationship to do that.
Yeah, in and I think that's why this law is here for the good, bad, or indifferent. It's like this can be used in tiny, like micro doses.
This is like a pinch of salt.
Yes.
You just put a pinch of salt, not a whole cup.
Yeah, you don't like pour the whole ocean in there. Because when you do this in tiny doses, yeah, it does make you more relatable, more approachable, and more authentic, like genuinely authentic.
Right.
Rather than there is a tipping point where it just all of a sudden just becomes terrible for you. Because then it's just like,
Because people can feel it at a certain point.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's something to be said where there is a difference in the hierarchy and that it's noticed. Right? When people actually notice it, that's when people have the feelings about it. And when somebody up here tries to treat themselves as if they're down here, that incongruity is something that causes people to have strong feelings about it. Whereas if they were to go ahead and treat themselves maybe not so seriously and they can just have a good time, people are more likely to relate to that because, oh, we can relate with having a good time and generally being an appreciative and funny person. That's much easier to take than someone expressing false humility.
It's a fine line to walk between producing the responses of empathy, and then when you at that tipping point, it becomes sympathy, and then you're in a really like danger zone when it becomes pity.
Yeah.
It's like good, bad, or ugly. It's like it's bad when people are, you're supposed to be commanding influence over people and they just pity you. Mm-hmm. That's really bad.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot to get that, depending on what differences exist in the hierarchy. Mm-hmm. But there's something to be said about that, where it doesn't, depending on the context of the situation, it could go bad real quick, depending on how you treat it.
Yeah. But then if, activate people's spidey senses that you're doing this
performatively.
Performatively, that's where you get contempt.
Oh, yeah.
It will definitely 100% breed contempt in other people.
Right, because they sniff you out as being fake. Mm-hmm. And people hate fake.
So definitely the golden zone, I would think, is where you get just enough of this kind of self-deprecation that's wrapped in humor.
Yes.
That's the best way to deliver this, but it is a very difficult thing to do, especially to do naturally and in at the speed of life, right in there in real time.
And it's interesting because you can see this a lot in how people take compliments. Because if you're already up there and somebody's gassing you up, you can just agree and amplify, which is like somebody says, oh, hey, I love those glasses. And you go, really? These old things? These are awesome. They even do this. And you go ahead and pull them off and do all kinds of hot nonsense with them. Is a matter of you lean into the compliment that they give you in a funny way is an interesting way to handle that. But then the opposite end of that is something like, no, I don't believe you, and just pushing the compliment away. Whereas a lot of times women will do that in an attempt to be funny about it. Because I think that a lot of times they don't feel comfortable getting compliments about something that they don't feel good about. Right? There's certain things that every woman is like, I put effort into this thing. So I want to be recognized and noticed for this thing that I put effort into. And then when you get a compliment on something that is just completely outside of your notice and you view as a weakness, it's harder to take that compliment well, even if it's coming from a genuine place, which is, it's interesting because I don't think that guys have a problem with that as much. Well, I mean, guys don't get compliments anywhere near as much as women do anyway, to begin with. So any compliment is probably a good compliment for most guys. Whereas with women, people are just trying to bang women, so they're going to get compliments. And that's just what it is.
Yeah.
And that's the truth of the matter is they might not even really care about you as a person. They're just seeing you as an avatar for the time being because they see you as beautiful or an object to be, had rather than you as a person.
Fun fact, whenever, I have a very sensitive, not even sensitive, but just a very heightened sense of smell.
Yes.
And a lot of the times, the biggest thing that comes to my notice is if I hug somebody at church and stuff, and they smell really nice.
Sure.
And it's funny because I'll go, you smell pretty. And it's funny how they just don't know what to do with that. But it's like, look,
Well, if they're wearing perfume,
Yeah.
like they've worn it to smell a certain way.
But it's interesting because I don't do this disingenuously. Like, it is genuinely like, you smell
You're paying a
awesome
genuine
nice.
compliment.
And
yeah.
am I sitting there like sniffing everybody? Obviously not. But if I like come in contact with somebody and I'm like, oh, that smells really
Well, it's
nice.
like your passive perception.
Yeah.
You are picking it up passively. You're not actively going,
Yeah. Do you pass the smell test?
right. You're not
No.
actively doing this.
That's creepy.
That's disgusting. But you can see things, you can hear things, you can feel things, you can smell things
Yeah.
passively. And when something hits the radar,
Yeah.
you notice it.
Yeah.
It's just a matter. It's like
passes my vibe check.
it's just like when a guy sees a beautiful woman. It's like, oh, it's in the periphery. It's passively detected that she's a beautiful woman.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I don't go, what is that perfume? Or, oh, did you take a shower? What soap? I'm not like gonna go in that. That's weird.
That is super
That
weird.
is weird and it's intrusive unless you're my children. I'm like, that smells terrible. Please go wash that. That's the only one I'm gonna like pry into. But
I think that most women wouldn't take a question about a choice of perfume to be offensive if it is actually perfume.
yeah, I just
Because it's
don't.
an intentional choice. Right, but it's an intentional choice
Yeah.
on their part because that's part of how they chose to present themselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that is an element of effort, going back to a previous point. She put that level of effort into her general appearance. Yeah, how you smell isn't part of your appearance, but it is part of how you present yourself to the world. So I think that most women where you have a fairly close relationship would not take offense to that.
Yeah, but as a rule, I genuinely do not pry
comes off as
further
creepy.
into it. Like, honestly, I just don't want to know. Like, if they volunteer that information, like if they're wearing like a specific,
After you compliment
perfume.
them, oh, you smell nice. And then you go,
Oh,
thanks,
that's my
it's
new
Chanel,
perfume.
whatever.
Yeah, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But, if they give that information, cool. If not, like, take the compliment. Like, hey, did you shower recently? That's great. Keep that up. I don't know what, but, it's not like.
That implies that there's a past history that
Yeah,
they didn't.
it's not like, oh, you finally do have a pleasant smell like you didn't before.
That's
It's
basically
just
what
not-
that statement says, though.
Yeah.
Without saying it directly.
But I just go, oh, you smell pretty.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it's male or female. I'll say you smell pretty,
That is kind of weird to say that to a guy.
especially to a younger guy or an older guy. I'll say you smell pretty.
That's weird, but okay.
But genuinely, I'm very like reticent to do that with like people our age or younger. Especially younger, that's really weird. No. And all of a sudden,
That reminds me of that clip of Joe Biden where
like sniffing,
with the little girl, and he
Yeah,
goes
I'm
ahead
not a
and
Joe Biden sniffer.
right
I'm
over
not
her
doing
shoulder
that.
and takes a
Yeah, it's
big
weird.
old whiff.
Like a chunk of her hair and goes, oh my, what is this?
Yeah. So that's clearly not what's being done, but when you go ahead and say it like that, it just evokes that thought in my
That's
mind.
why I caveated it first with, I have a very heightened sense of smell. Like to the point where when we got Rona and I lost my sense of smell, I didn't know who I was. Like
you were disoriented.
It was like I lost my superpower,
It reminds me of a cat with half of their whiskers gone.
Yeah.
They're
It's
just like wandering around disoriented.
I don't know what's real anymore.
Well, because
Yeah, it was kinda
they're
like that.
missing essential senses that guide and direct them on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of ways, your sense of smell helps you navigate the world, right?
Yeah,
You
it
talk
does.
about how you can smell sickness on your children.
I can. It's like, it was just the weirdest thing. And the first time I ever like said it to someone else, it was like strange. But it was another mom, and they're like, "I get that." I was like, "Okay, I feel so seen."
Right, because it's not unusual to smell differences in how their body chemistry is expressing itself
Yeah.
to you because you have that sensitive sense of smell. Because women have this innate, like, sensory process to sense danger about them.
Yeah.
And the smells, like, if you smell smoke, chances are there's fire around somewhere.
Well, like just like that one, like either our oldest daughter is like cooking something or she's got something in the oven or whatever. And I'm in the bedroom and I was like, you need to go check that. And then she'll sit there and go, what? Like, did the timer stop working? And she's like, there's 3 minutes left on it, Mom. I was like, smelled about done.
Maybe you should check it anyway.
Yeah. And it's been
It
interesting.
may not last 3 minutes.
It's actually saved us a few, pies and pizzas and something else, I was like, yeah, it was good. It actually comes in handy quite often. But yeah, I hardly ever tell people that they don't smell nice.
Yeah.
Unless we're really close. And I'm like, you might want to go fix that.
Sure, and that's kind of you just adjusting their crown a little bit.
Yeah.
And just trying to help them out in a social situation.
Yeah. But generally, no. Unless they're children, then no holds barred.
You tell the parent, you're like, hey, just thought I'd let you know.
Because I'd want to know.
So going back to the idea of don't be too perfect, do you believe that people have a desire to see people fail?
We've talked about in previous things, we've talked about that hate comes from the bottom.
Sure.
And I see a lot of that where people are like, I told you that was terrible, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, but have you ever taken a risk in your life? Probably not.
Yeah.
In the armchair quarterback situation.
Yeah, if you're not in the arena and you're out in the stands, what skin do you have in the game?
Exactly. It was funny. I was having a conversation with our teenage kids,
Okay.
Both of them, but especially our son, who's been particularly annoyed with our youngest daughter. She's just very emotional, and we try and rein that in as much as we can. But both of them were like, "Man, we didn't get away with half the stuff they do." Blah blah blah. It's like, okay, cool. And she's like, my kid, she's like, I would never let them act like that. And I was like, I told her, most people say that they were the perfect parent until they actually had children. So, get your own and we can talk.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see how that works out,
I am
right?
interested to see how that plays off, especially because, when they get to go to grandma's house and go have fun and all that stuff. And then they come back and they're like, you never let us do anything like this or let us do anything fun. It's like,
It's a different standard. It's grandparents versus parents.
it's like, trust me, I will infuriate you more when you have your own children and they come to my house and they get all the cookies and sugar that they want, and then I'll send them back to you.
Back. And you say that, but I don't think we're going to go ahead and intentionally cause chaos and problems for the children.
Definitely not.
And if we provide them with treats and stuff like that, it isn't for that express purpose. It's to show love to them in a way that maybe their parents don't regularly show them, because a grandparent's love and a parent's love are very different things.
They are.
And they will have the benefit of having a grandfather in their life, whereas they did not have that benefit.
They didn't.
On either side. Mm-hmm. So there's something to be said about that too. So I'm very interested to see how things go as far as that's concerned.
Yeah. But that specific interaction, I did expand it a little bit to this general truth that unless you really understand the position any person is when you're critiquing them, you're not going to really know that your opinion is correct.
Right. Because you don't have the context.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times people will come into a thing and they will have an emotional reaction to what they see and then lock that in as if that is absolute truth, come in guns blazing, and then refuse to budge on that point. I see this a lot on the internet where dudes will make a comment that's very straightforward and about a specific thing, and then a woman will come by, look at the same comment, and get upsetty spaghetti about something else that is not actually being addressed, and then insert themselves into the conversation and insist that you see it their way when that was never the topic being discussed in the first place.
I'm sorry, this is an A and B conversation, so see yourself out of it.
Right. And then you try to treat them with kid gloves and they get to be more and more insufferable. And then finally you're just like, look, lady, clearly you have better things to be doing in your life than this. Maybe you should see your way out of this.
It's like, take your energy and go make the world a better place.
This isn't it.
This ain't it. Yeah. It's just, as much as I can, I've always made it a point to help, especially my children, because I had to learn this, from being young and impulsive and dumb, to try to see things from people's perspectives, especially when they do the best they can with the situation that they're given in that moment.
Sure.
You have to at least try and respect that person and them attempting to do the best with what they have.
Right. And understand that they have common grace, and there's certain things that you should be able to take a look at and say, what are the circumstances that led them to make that decision? Or what is the context in which they live for that to be the decision path that seemed most logical at the time? Or maybe it wasn't a logical decision. Maybe it was a strictly emotional decision. But there's a context that caused that emotional outburst or that set of feelings that caused them to make decisions.
And I really do enjoy, teaching them, our older kids, because those are the best discussions that we have about literary characters.
Right, because you have the story to lay out a context for you.
Yeah. So that's been really interesting to, dive into those characters and figure out their motivations and the perception of the situation that they had at the time. And, whether it was the best decision or the worst decision, it doesn't matter. Like, we're going to talk about, just the decision-making process as it is.
Yeah. When I think about people wanting to see other people fail, I think of just like fail compilations on YouTube where it's just people that are just doing dumb things.
Yeah.
And then getting cheap entertainment about it.
See, that's a completely different thing. It feels like flagrantly like you had to know this wasn't going to go well.
But they didn't.
But it wasn't enough to stop them from making that decision and pursuing that action in the first place, I guess.
I think you're giving them too much credit.
I am at that point. It's just like, if in any situation, it's just flagrantly obvious. Yeah, we're going to laugh about it. I'm sorry.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
But I think there is something to people wanting to see successful people fail because they want to see somebody who puts themselves up to appear to be perfect and watch them get mud on them.
The dangerous part with that is you need to really take a look at that and see if that's your perception of them.
What do you mean?
If they're like, oh yeah, they're sitting there, they pretend like they're so perfect and they're not, and that's why you're happy to see them
you're
fail.
Talking about the person, whether they're presenting themselves as perfect for somebody else.
If that's your perception as armchair quarterback.
Got it. Okay, I see what you're saying now.
So be careful with that.
Yeah, I think that relatively few people will admit to those kind of biases.
Of course.
When they're making that commentary or that criticism.
Absolutely.
Because it doesn't suit them or their message to put that down as a part of the message.
Because it makes you look worse. It makes that person look worse.
Yeah, because that's the objective. The objective is to make the other person look bad. It isn't the objective to say, I'm a reasonable person looking at this from a reasonable perspective, and they got dirty. Because that's not what the purpose of that content is. The purpose of the content is to get other people influenced and multiplying the effect of whatever that event was. It's not bad, it's bad enough that the thing happened, but now we're going to go ahead and put all these eyes on the thing that had happened and talk about it for a week or however long it stays in the news cycle because it's the new shiny quarter of the week or whatever. But that's like, it's crazy how much drama perpetuates in social media land and how like people will get all kinds of crazy about how something happened in somebody else's life. And then all these eyes are getting directed toward it. And then the next day, we need new drama. Let's go ahead and find the next thing and get people through that emotional roller coaster. It's just not healthy.
Yeah. It's like you need to get out of that cycle. Get off the hamster wheel.
But people love the hamster wheel.
Yeah, they do.
And women, I mean, like, why else do you think that the Housewives shows are popular? Because women love drama.
Mostly people watch those in like a completely different way than I do.
What do you mean?
Mostly for me, I, watch them pretty regularly. Not so much anymore, but it was a fascination to me that like these women, all this affluence, all this access, and all this influence too around them. They have these platforms and this position. Even before they got on a television show, a lot of, especially like the Dallas one, it was following a bunch of women in a charity circle, and it was like that, what we had talked about before with the upper classes using charity as like a social ladder.
Right.
That kind of thing. And so they were showing the ins and outs of the hierarchy within the circle,
Oh, that's interesting.
but all under the umbrella of participating in charitable organizations. It was interesting. But these women, like, sitting there and using this, like, they have all of this around them, and then this is how they use it, just to fling their feces at each other
Right.
like monkeys. It was just like, really, guys?
Well, it just goes to show that it's human nature and that it has different iterations depending on the context that you see it in, right? Because no matter how wealthy or poor you are, it's the same general human instincts to do these things. It's just a matter of whether or not they're well restrained or well trained.
But definitely these kind of shows are the ones where I first started to see that, oh, we're cute, we bicker, this is just how we are. And then it's like 5 years later, they get divorced.
Oh, of course they get divorced because there's no respect in the
This
relationship.
is where I started to see it. And then I started to look around in real life and I'm like, oh, wow.
It's all over the place.
Universal. It really is.
Mm-hmm. I always think it's funny when that happens, where you notice something in content and then you go, that doesn't really happen. And then
Like,
you look
oh my
around and you're
goodness,
like,
it really does happen.
oh crap, it's all over the place. I'm so sorry.
It's everywhere. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It's like the shattered glass thing.
Yeah.
Where you just can't unsee it at some point.
Unsee it. It will always spark your notice from now on. You are cursed.
Yeah. So the next law is law number 47, which says, do not go past the mark you aimed for. The idea is the biggest danger after success is overreach. And I see this all the time in the context of card games where people will overextend their position and then just one little prick just pops the balloon that they've inflated for themselves because they left themselves open. And it is insane how often it happens with inexperienced players, where we could just go ahead and see that you want to do the thing, but you have blinders on because you're doing the thing that you're intending to do.
So focused on this thing.
And then you don't see the threats coming from either side of you.
All the dynamics at play holistically. It also reminds me of like the card game Munchkin.
Oh, yeah.
And being the first to reach level 9 and start to go for that 10, and it's everybody like throws stuff at you. It's like, when are you guys gonna learn? Do not be the first one to that point.
Right, but
Like,
the thing is, there's a way to do it, and it's very nuanced. It's a matter of knowing your position, and you have to know where you're at on the board for that to make sense. But most people just go ahead and
They just go.
They just go.
I know.
And then all it takes is just one thing, and then bam, they get knocked back 3 levels, and all of a sudden they're level 6, and they're like, okay, now I'm stuck in 4th position, and I can't get past because now I've had all these things taken from me. This is funny because this happens a lot with a dear friend of mine, where he will go ahead and be goaded into doing something because somebody else did something to him, and he will just lock in on them till the end of the game. No matter what happens anywhere else, this person is going down. Now, don't get me wrong. I'll do something very similar, but on purpose. Like, I'll know, like, the other stuff that's going on, but I will use my position of strength to bury somebody that goes ahead and comes after me.
Yeah.
On purpose, to make an example of them.
Exactly.
Those are different things.
Yeah.
Because I know where I'm at in the process. And depending on where I'm at in the process, I make different choices. Whereas some people will just do the thing, or they will just overextend their position because they think they have it and completely disregard the possibilities that they may not have it.
I got it. Oh, I don't got it.
Like, I love causing a fumble at like the 1 yard line where they think they have it, and then I just get them right at the last possible second so that they can almost smell victory. And then all of a sudden their face is in the mud, and it's like, yes, this is glorious. It is the best feeling. But then you got to go ahead and pick them up and dust them off so that it's not like a lasting emotional trauma that you provide for them, because then otherwise you get to be the arch enemy.
Nobody wants to play with you.
Yeah. Well, it was really funny because like yesterday I just played that dynamic over and over again. The, hey, that one player, as a friend of mine, locking in on whatever, and I just played that like a fiddle for the whole
I
night.
know what you're doing. I have the answer to it.
And I just go ahead and like goad him in this small area to get him to go somewhere else. And I won every game that night. And to the point where they were just like, okay, so before we get started next time, we're just going to go ahead and go against him. And I'm like, all right, guys, if you want to play Arch Enemy, that's fine. Let me just bring an appropriate canon to the occasion.
They don't remember how they got onto each other and stuff in the first place because of, it's like the cycle is just repeating itself.
So I just wrap it in some kind of nonsense and just push buttons here and there, just gently. I find a curtain to hide behind, and then when my time to strike comes, I leap out and be like, haha, I've got it. But I think that the idea of overextension in like statecraft is really important too. That's a lot of how the Roman Empire fell, is they kept capturing territory after territory, and they had good infrastructure at the core of the empire, and they would build out infrastructure. But at some point, they conquered so much land that they could not consolidate power within. And that, coupled with social decay and with this political largesse that came along with it, led to the downfall of the Roman Empire in a lot of ways. What, babe?
Oh, I'm just, our education content that we, especially for our little kids, they have all these things to songs.
Okay.
And so this is especially the ancient history cycle, they have one about the fall of Rome. Mm-hmm. Taxes, slavery, unemployment, and diseases all contributed to the fall of Rome.
Yeah. There's a lot that contributed to the fall of Rome. But
so I'm just sitting there playing this, and I'm like looking at him like, yeah, that.
Sure. And it's interesting because sometimes people will go ahead and take victory laps instead of just winning the game. And normally that's like hubris getting the better of you.
I know. They're like, especially, they already have the podiums all set up for you to stand on. But no, you got to take another turn.
Yeah, take another victory lap.
Just go stand on the podium with everybody else, please.
Quit your showboating. Just do the thing.
I mean, there is time to do that, especially with people who are like the aforementioned law, who just sit there and they're just salivating at the prospect of you failing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, take the victory lap.
Yeah, take the victory lap just to put it in their faces.
Just right in front of them.
Yeah.
Just right in front of them.
That's pretty funny. And I mean, there's something to be said about the entertainment flair with that.
Yes.
If you're going to go ahead and do that for flourish, I think there's something to that a lot.
Well, it's funny because those, especially in like superhero movies and stuff like that, those are the villains that we love to hate.
Okay, tell me about that one. Right, but like
just the struggle that he goes through to like, show people up. But when he does get into, emerge victorious at one point, the showmanship of it. Those are the people that we enjoy. Like, okay, it sucks that we're at this point and we know this is limited, but we're gonna watch it anyway. We're gonna just.
At least they're entertaining about it.
Yeah, exactly.
They may be villainous, but at least they're fun villains.
They got some style and flair about it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting because this kind of thing applies at home too. It's just when you are doing disciplinary action with the children, there's a measured amount that you should provide to them, and you shouldn't just overdo it because then you're going to cause damage in the relationship. So this idea of knowing when you have done enough to affect change is really important. Mm-hmm. And not to go too far beyond, because then you introduce trauma and then they'll have a harder time bouncing back, and then you have to spend time reinforcing and repairing the relationship rather than actually just moving forward.
That's why Ephesians 6 is a thing.
Yeah, don't exasperate your children.
It's funny because they have, different translations like represent it differently, like exasperate or provoke your children to wrath.
Right.
Like you're going to be part of their
revenge story.
Supervillain origin story. Like don't do that, because there is a real consideration that you have a profound effect on, how you parent has a profound effect on how they turn out as adults. Mm-hmm. So that is in there for a reason.
Yeah. Why do you think it's hard for some people to stop when they've already got the thing won and they've already done the thing? Why do you think they push their luck so much far beyond that?
Just right off the bat, it's absolutely a pride thing. And, keep telling the kids, and I just said it yesterday about, that's why self-control is that last for the spirit. Because that's a huge speed bump for everybody. Male, female, it doesn't matter who you are, what you do.
Well, it's
self-control
applicable
and everything.
It's applicable in so many contexts is really the tough part about it.
Yeah.
Is there's so many things that if you just let loose, you can just cause so much damage in doing these things. Whereas if you restrain yourself for the benefit of others and the benefit of yourself, honestly, because one, you reserve resources for more important things. You reserve your emotional well-being for other things. You reserve your ability to retain and deal with stress when you are controlled and measured with how you conduct yourself. It's just better, generally speaking, but a lot of people don't have that emotional regulation or the ability to see when enough is enough.
It's funny because instantly I thought about more and more now video games.
What do you mean?
When you complete the main storyline thing and you beat the game, then what does it do after the credits roll? New game plus, more things to do.
Yeah, but I think that's more a matter of suiting people's desire for challenge or suiting people's desire for more. Because a lot of times the game in and of itself is not enough. And they do DLCs and all that nowadays too, so
but
there's
that's
a lot to that.
kind of the reason people want to do that. People purchase the game and they enjoy that replayability. Is that kind of thing where it's you always, what's next? Okay, that was great, and I did the thing, we win, cool. What's next?
So you think that people are just not satisfied with a narrative conclusion?
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, just like these things, it's not good or bad. It is.
Yeah. I remember back in the day, before New Game Plus was a ubiquitous feature of video games, a good example is Final Fantasy IV. So at the end of the game, no spoilers because the game
It's been out a while. Okay, guys.
The game came out 30 years ago at this point, right? So if you don't know, I'm sorry, but so at the end of the game, Cecil goes ahead and becomes the King of Baron, and Rosa is his wife. And they've been through this journey together of just all the trials and tribulations of being the Dark Knight, changing into a paladin, rising in newness of life, fighting his brother, realizing that it's his brother, and all this thing, and saving the world and saving all these wonderful people along the way, and meeting them and being friends with them. And for the narrative to end where Cecil, who once was a servant of the king, becomes the king himself, that is such a fulfilling narrative conclusion to the story. And that's enough. But then they have another game nowadays where you get to go ahead and play the game where the story goes beyond that. And one of the playable characters is Rosa and Cecil's son. And so that's another interesting bit of the thing where it's a completely different narrative because Theodore gets his own story compared to Cecil and Rosa. So it's a completely different game. It's not the kind of thing where, we're doing a new game plus.
But the draw is that it comes at the conclusion of this thing that's so well loved.
Right. And so it's just a sequel of something where it is directly related. Unlike a lot of sequels where they're just we're going to take a different perspective on a thing. Kind of
or prequels and stuff like that.
Yeah. But I think that's for the sake of creating content for people to enjoy and for entertainment value more than to tell a narrative.
Yeah, for game makers, it's we get, more revenue out of the same kind of vein.
Right, and I don't fault them for doing that because you're perpetuating economic development, and there is something to be said about entertainment having value.
But there's also the reason why they know they can get increased revenue from the same vein is because people want to play that. People want to do that.
They want to do the thing.
But it also kind of reminds me of our story.
What do you mean?
Because when we started and we were like dating, it was like the whole thing and the whole struggle was to get, to endure, and whatever, and stay and develop our relationship to get married. And then, so I guess our new game plus was married life.
Well, I guess it depends on how you look at the story, right? Because I don't see us in New Game Plus. I see us as still being part of the main narrative.
The thing is
I would
that,
see
like,
that having grandchildren probably is like where the New Game Plus is.
Yeah.
Because we see the next generation beyond those that are directly under our own influence. Does that make sense?
well, like, when we got together, were we even thinking about that kind of stuff?
No, but we were 15 and 16 respectively.
Exactly.
So it's
The thing is that we've had such a long, like, saga, it's almost like multiple parts of it.
okay.
But the thing is that, like, there is so much of we were working toward a thing and then the goalpost moves.
I think that's natural for most narratives.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's good or it's bad. This is how it is.
Okay. That's just how you see it.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Like,
This just makes me think of that. Kind of like, okay, I'm not saying that's our new game plus, I'm not trying to.
yeah,
It's interesting to see it that way.
It's interesting. Well, because the thing is, we have a very different way of looking at it. Because I look at it as that first part is the prologue, and you were just getting the story started, and the adventure is the life together.
But I mean, there was a point at one time or another where it was just like, are we going to make it beyond the prologue?
Yeah. So maybe it's closer to like The Hobbit compared to The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, okay.
Where The Hobbit, in and of itself, had its own narrative story arcs, and then you lead into the next story or the next series of stories.
Yeah. So it's interesting, like, to equate this to like a life's journey in general. No matter at what point it starts. But I think there is more and more of a penchant for people to, get to that point of, okay, I did the thing I set out to do. Now what?
Sure, but I think that's pretty natural. I think
Yeah,
it's a
it
natural
is.
development in people's lives because there's something about setting incremental goals and achieving them and then setting the next incremental goal that I think is a really healthy behavior for most people. And I think that the opposite is actually more unhealthy. I think that if you, one, don't have direction or you just have one big goal, if you have no direction, chances are you're not going to get anywhere of any, value in a lasting way. And if you only have one big goal with no intermediary steps to get there, it's easy to look at it and to get overwhelmed and to just wither under the gravity of that overall goal. What do you think about that? Does that sound pretty reasonable? Let's see. Let's go on and move on to the next law. Law number 48 is assume formlessness. This is the idea of sometimes it's not good to be ice because ice can break pretty easily depending on how big of an ice cube we're talking about, whereas water cannot be broken. You can go ahead and contain it in different areas, but you don't break water. I mean, you can boil it, I guess, and it reconstitutes.
But even then, it's still there.
And it just gets rained down and all of that.
Yeah.
But I think that it's interesting how Robert Greene draws on Eastern philosophy to talk about how being adaptable to the circumstances around you is generally a better step or a better process to live life rather than looking at everything as like Lego bricks to be like reassembled. And there's some value in having different ways of looking at things to solve problems, but it is something different to be completely rigid in your own system as a leader, because then you expect everybody else to bend to your will. And I think that a lot of times, unless you navigate that very well, it doesn't go well, generally speaking, because most people don't want to be led like an iron fist. So what do you think about that?
Eastern philosophy is pretty much spot on as far as this concept of that. And also it reminds me of, reading a lot about it as I have of Stoic philosophy, where you are strengthening your own constitution to be able to provide yourself with the things you need to respond to everything that you cannot control. Everything without yourself and what happens and how people react and all of that and people's moves and whatever, they can do that all the time, but all day, every day. It doesn't matter. But what you can control is your reactions to things, your perception of things, and your ability to deal with, whatever life throws at you.
Sure. And I think if you're too rigid, you become really predictable, and it's easy to just mess with you. And going back to the example of card games, I love it when my opponents are predictable because then I can just mess with them, be a little trickster and just do things and then eventually just swing in for the victory when the time is right. And I find that a lot of times people are very transparent about what they do rather than holding things a little bit tighter to the chest. Mm-hmm. And as a result, their vulnerabilities are easier to see.
Yeah, Eastern philosophy does find its inspiration in the natural world. And this is most prominent in thinking about a tree.
Okay.
Because a tree will have its roots that go deep, but how it actually grows is not usually linear. It has bends and curves, and sometimes a limb gets hacked off and it grows a scar there, and it is able to bend for catastrophic things, but ultimately the growth is still upward.
Right. There's something to be said about the ability to bend and flex, because generally the things that are overly rigid are much easier to break than the things that bend. And that's, I think, in a lot of ways representative of overly rigid leadership or overly rigid views on a lot of things, is unless there's a reason for it, like if you have a conviction that's locked in a place and you have rationale for that to be the case, then okay, nobody's saying that's the case. The issue is these minor things that you can give on a little bit where you don't have to just say, no, we're not doing any of this.
You don't have to be obstinate with every little thing. Let the big things be the big things, but they are few and far between those hills that you're willing to die on.
Right. And it's not to say that you should give up all the little hills. The question is putting those things in their proper context and saying, look, is this important enough to have a discussion over? Is this something that I want to adjust the terms of the relationship over? Because there is something to be said about giving in at every minor hill. Because if you give in on every minor hill, eventually every minor hill is going to look like a major hill. And that's how guys end up losing frame in relationships. That's how women end up henpecking their husbands. It's all these kinds of things. It's like the idea of just causing someone to be a loser by henpecking them into submission.
But this, again, calls back to having a vision and a purpose and a set of guiding principles. And those are like the tree. Those are those roots that grow deep, that are set deep in your foundational trajectory of growth. Like that is at its root. Those are the things that you will not compromise because that will ultimately just be your end.
Right. Why do you think that some people cling to rigid identities?
Pride. Again.
Okay.
Like, especially with things where you see that a certain thing works and then you just kind of lean into that so much that it's caught up or it's rolled into your identity. It becomes part of who you are at the fabric of your being.
Right.
And when other people recognize that, you almost paint yourself into a corner. And so if that isn't the thing anymore and you have to change it, you kind of lose sight of who you are.
Sure.
So a lot of people, you will see that there's this confrontation with them needing to make major changes because it isn't working, and they will not, and they just get stuck. So it just becomes part of like, well, that's my shtick, my bit. Like, if
it's what I do.
Yeah, I'm Sancho.
Yeah.
But that part of, when that becomes too much of who you are, it's like, yes, it's great to have transcendent purpose and a set of, guiding principles, But when you latch onto this other thing that really doesn't matter, and you have to make, almost make the square peg go into the round hole. Mm-hmm. It's like, that's not going to work unless you shave off those edges.
Sure, or a lot of lube.
Yeah.
But there's something to be said about how maybe it's not pride sometimes, but other times it can be a matter of comfort, where because it is easy to be rigid, because you don't have to think. You can just be the way that you are, and it can just be like wearing the same suit every day. It's just comfortable because that's just what it is.
Yeah, but those are the things that are kind of fairly innocuous and not directly related to...
Yeah, I was using it as a representative example. Yeah.
But like those kinds of things, if you're like going to just like latch onto that thing that's, relatively innocuous, if you're going to try and meld that with some kind of grander purpose and you have to still make that work, that's where you run into trouble.
Yeah, it's like you try to go ahead and graft a new branch into a tree from a different plant. It looks really funky. And that's how you get hybrids and all of that. Mm-hmm. But still, it just looks funky when that process is happening. And it's not exactly super easy for that to happen. Do you have any other thoughts on this before we move on?
No.
All right. Good. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the season and say this was a kind of wild ride to go through the ups and downs of the different levers of power that are available to people and to look at them from an external point of view and not judge them on a moral basis. And I think that's hard for a lot of people to do, is to divorce a thing from its morality. And I think that people have a hard time dissecting ideas and looking at them from their requisite parts rather than just taking it as a whole. I think people have a very difficult time doing that and separating things out. What do you think about that?
It's been an interesting journey, but you see the basic tenets of what's required to walk this out well, which is what I've seen that's been woven throughout is a knowledge of self and then a fundamental purpose and guiding set of principles. Like those things are what's going to help you navigate this to a positive end.
Yeah, and I think over top of those things, another thing that is really important and emphasized over and over again is the ability to read the environment around you. Because we can know ourselves, but unless we take a look at the outside world, it is difficult to influence others. And the purpose of power is to influence people and things. And if we're not looking at the environment around us, any moves that we make will have unintended consequences. And that's really important for people to remember. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people seldom think about these things. They just go, oh, this is good for me. It's good enough. Never mind what happens to everybody else involved. It's like that person on the highway that'll go ahead and change 4 lanes at a time in a reckless fashion when there's other cars around. That can easily be a very dangerous situation, but oh my gosh, I need to get off at this exit right now. They have this objective that is at odds with everybody else's objective to get from A to B safely. And that guy that's doing the 4 lane changes is a jerk in that situation because you could easily have predicted this or just take the next exit or any other number of things that are in that circumstance. But they feel that their way is so important for them to have right there at that moment that they disregard everything else.
Like, it doesn't matter what everybody else is doing. I'm doing this, and you all are in my way.
Well, I think the idea of disregard for others is more and more common today than it has been in times past. Because even though we are more connected through social media and things like that, we are substantially more disconnected in terms of real social relationships. And I think that people have a harder and harder time of actually relating to people in real life as a result.
Because they're getting the Pinterest version of everybody.
Sure. And
even
then
themselves.
They show the Pinterest version of themselves.
Yeah.
And they hide all the dirty stuff.
Well, especially if that becomes your main source of interaction with others, You are like editing yourself, so you are like masking all of the skeletons in the closet, right?
Right.
So it almost gives you a distorted perception of yourself as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So once again, I really want to emphasize with people that power is not good or bad in and of itself. It is like money. It is like a lot of things in life. It is a tool for your tool belt, and how you apply it is what determines whether it's good or evil, when you look at your own foundational moral system to go along with it. Do you have any closing thoughts?
It's been a wild ride. Like this whole thing, it's been pretty fun to kind of hash these things out, especially reconciling them to real life situations and at all levels of human function. Like if you're in a corporate sense, if you are, just trying to relate to a group of friends or just strangers on the street. And of course, where we're most concerned with is families, spouses, like relationships of those people that you care for the most. And sometimes knowing these things, you are, before you were aware of these things, you were wielding these things in an untoward way to the people that you purport to care most for in the world. Mm-hmm. And just the knowledge of these things it's beneficial to not only know about yourself, but how, relate to others.
So from a woman's perspective, was there anything that was really surprising to you along this process?
A lot of the laws that we kind of focused on, it's all the more apparent what different creatures we are, men from women, and how intentional we need to be in trying to understand, especially as women, to try and understand how men operate. Mm-hmm. And to get to a point, especially with a spouse, that you can understand one another a little better to get to a better, solution to a lot of pain points within a marriage and within a family.
Yeah, it's interesting how some of these laws apply differently depending on the context of where you are in a relationship. Like as a wife, you would apply things differently than you would as a husband, for example, especially in a traditional relationship like we've got, where there is a clear hierarchy involved. And there are things that you do that I would not be doing. And there are things that I do that you would not be doing. And it's interesting to see how those pieces of the puzzle fit together, especially when you contrast that to how, generally speaking, the world would go ahead and see these things. Because generally there's blank slate equalism and egalitarianism running around everywhere. And we're like, oh yeah, we're just interchangeable pieces of puzzles and we all are the same. No, we're not.
But also it's been interesting to go through these things and think about how I interface with my daughters as opposed to my sons, especially our two oldest, where we have teenagers who are about to become adults.
Yeah.
So, and it's going to be interesting when they actually watch these things in the future, in the not too distant future.
Yeah, because I think it's reasonable for them to go ahead and start watching them like pretty much after this episode is done, and to work through it a little bit at a time, maybe like one per Saturday or something like that.
Yeah.
It seems to be pretty reasonable. But our next season is going to be about family matters. So 12 to 14 episodes about that. If you have any suggestions about topics to cover, then by all means, hit us up in the comment section below. Feel free to hit the subscribe button and to hit the like button. And we would love to see more of you. And hopefully you'll join us for the next journey. Have a fantastic day.